Pew launched the Results First initiative in partnership with the MacArthur Foundation back in 2010 because on the heels of the Great Recession, state leaders were really struggling. They were faced with pressure to be good fiscal stewards of their state's limited resources and also meet the growing needs of their communities. And they were making tremendous cuts because they didn't have many other options. So after talking with lots of policymakers and experts around the country, Pew proposed that if state leaders had access to data and the capacity to analyze and interpret that data, they could invest their limited resources in programs that work. Results First had a lot of early successes that exceeded many expectations that we had. One of the things that we noticed was there were a lot more states interested in doing this work than we anticipated. By 2017, we had partnered with 27 states around the country, and that reflected the political spectrum: red states, blue states, purple states. By 2019, we saw $1 billion collectively shifted towards effective evidence-based programs.
It's a big deal to us to know what our investment provides. You know, you hear commonly a term, return on investment. Well, we have to look at that also, particularly when we're dealing with taxpayers' money. We have to understand specifically where it's going and what those results are.
We've been fortunate to work with Pew Results First initiative since its inception, and that really gives us a leg up as analysts to be able to advise the legislature on making those types of investments to get better results for New Mexico. It cuts down on the amount of time that we have to go out and do independent research about what works. It's been very beneficial in all areas, from criminal justice, education, behavioral health care for both adults and kids, a range of different areas. That this initiative has been very useful for us.
So when we think about evidence and its role in policymaking, I think one of the keys that evidence provides is it's the difference between whether or not we are wishing and hoping and we have good intentions that something will work versus whether we can be highly confident based on longitudinal data that the policies we're implementing are working. And we also use evidence to think about what is it that we need to stop doing. There are certain things, if we've invested in them and they're not working, we can put those dollars to better use in other applications.
Evidence-based policymaking is answering the key question, what works? Before we make an investment, we want to make sure we're putting our dollars to highest use and investing them in things that will deliver results.
Results First has been a great partner for the governor's office in our efforts to incorporate evidence-based policy into the budget process. One aspect of working with Results First that I think we found very valuable is that they've created a nationwide community. And we've been able to connect with other states who are working on the same issues, and they have different approaches that we want to be able to learn from. I think we're at a point where evidence-based policy isn't really a novelty anymore. We really want to make sure that it's part of how we operate. It's part of the infrastructure. It's part of just the normal process of what we do in the governor's office in developing the budget.
Results First started off as a joint approach that we were working with the executive branch and the budgeting office, back and forth between legislative, executive, looking at different budget proposals, asking for new proposals to have evidence as the executive branch put them forward. It's now become a piece of legislation. Senate Bill 284 really codifies the Results First process in Colorado and makes sure that any new budget proposals have evidence to back them up. And I think it's put us in a great place when we look at the budgets here in the state.
I think getting good results in government at any level, whether it's state, local, federal, having an efficient government is a goal of Republicans, Democrats, independents. It's a bipartisan goal. I think everyone wants their government to operate efficiently and well and not spend more money than they have to, because there's a lot of need out there, and I think elected officials certainly see that.
We joined the Results First initiative back in 2017 when the legislature was looking for paths or ways to become more evidence-based, data-driven in their decision-making process. Results First to us is a starting point. It leads most of the discussion. If something is evidence-based, is it working for our population? Can we test fidelity? Can we test the efficacy of the programs? I think that while being new, there are still long ways to go, but the process has started, and that decision makers in the state are interested in learning more and becoming more informed about what's working and what's not working.
Results First has helped us rethink the way that we do budget planning here at the Office of State Budget and Management. We have started to incorporate more data and evidence all the way from the beginning when we develop what we call a base budget, or the starting point for the budget, to when we get those change budget or expansion budget requests from agencies.
I came to Minnesota Management and Budget to kick off the Results First program here, and have seen it grown over the last 7 years from just myself working on it with a couple of colleagues to now an entire team of data analysts and social scientists and project managers trying to improve the quality of evidence that's available to decision makers. One of the great things that Pew allows us to do is not only connect with their experts and experts from across the country, but also other states that are working on evidence-based policymaking. And they regularly convene us for meetings to talk about what's working in those states, to share tools and templates and definitions, and to just talk about how do we promote this culture of evidence that we want to see in our states.
Results First is exiting the field of evidence-based policymaking in early 2023 because the field has changed quite a bit over the past 12 years. We've seen states much more interested in evidence than they were before, and I think that's in part to the work that we've done with them. There's also a lot more organizations that are working with states to help advance their evidence-based policymaking efforts. The field is really well positioned to continue the work that Results First started.
When NCSL took over the Results First peer learning community, we branded it the Governing for Results Network, a learning network or learning community of 11 states. So we bring together legislators, legislative staff, and executive branch leaders in evidence-based policymaking to come together to share ideas, to share their knowledge, their lessons learned. Results First has had a lasting impact in states and in the field of evidence-based policymaking. I think when you look across states, you can really see the seeds that have been planted, and when you look at the variety of things that states are doing to use evidence and data.
We were incredibly excited to hear that Results First was considering what the next phase looked like for each of the assets that they developed over the years. When I reflect back on Results First, the ultimate legacy is not about the wonky conversations, not about how do we build better budgets, but the legacy is ultimately about helping people and resources directed to programs and policies that work and the opportunity to make people's lives better.